Hi, this is Sergeant Beast Larson. Could anything in your personal life, as a law enforcement officer, police or corrections, anything in that field, cause you to become a liability at work? Now, we have policies, and I have permission from the victim of this story, who is my daughter, to share this briefly. We have policies in place. If you get arrested for anything, DUI, domestic violence, theft, anything, you're required to notify a supervisor. And the civilian world pretty much is like this too. I work in a private sector now. We have the same policy. Any type of arrest, you have to notify. But what if something is not an arrest? What if somebody in your family, not you, is the victim of a crime? I have children. I have a daughter. And several years ago, when I was working down in Georgia at Hays State Prison, we were told, she was very young, that she had been sexually assaulted. Now, my first instinct, I was out the door with 2 guns and bullets, extra clips, and a big knife, because it was somebody close to the family. I opened the door, and this big air barrier stopped me. You know, you walk outside and when it's hot and you feel that muggy. I walked out and something stopped me outside, 1 foot out the door. And I can tell you it was the good Lord telling me, stay with your family. They need you. She needs you. I turned around and went back inside. This was late at night that night. It was about midnight, I'll say. We talked. She'd had some stomach problems for about 6 months. We didn't know why. We had a good children's pediatric gastro doctor trying to solve this problem. Sleep, everything was changed. I knew, being retired police, something had happened. We just didn't know. Wife and I, we were on top of this as best as we could. We found out that night. The next day she called. The GI doctor said, I have a friend that I work with that does family counseling. We got in counseling that next morning immediately. Left counseling. I called the warden at the prison. I said, I need a private phone call with nobody in the office, and this has to be private. And then I need to talk to the HR director in private. He said, okay, it's just me. It's all good. I told him what happened. I said, look, I'm 50 years old. I'm professional law enforcement for over 25 years. I need to resign immediately because of this. I'm a sergeant. I supervise the isolation units. You know, my daughter was young, sexually assaulted. I said, I don't want to create a liability to myself and to you, and out of respect to you and the prison in the state of Georgia, I feel I need to resign, take care of my family. We've already been to counseling first thing this morning. I need to go this route. And I had also talked to an attorney before I called. He said that's the best thing to do as well. And I know in being in the court system as police, but I also wanted to have a local attorney to back me up and to be a reference when I talked to the warden. And I talked to the HR director, said the same thing. The warden said, I appreciate you doing this. I respect that. The door is always open for you to come back. The policy states that if when you leave within 12 months, you're a rank of sergeant. If there's a rank available to that, I can bring you back at the same rank. Wasn't important to me at the time. My family was, taking care of them. We continued with counseling, family counseling. This went through, I want to think it was beginning summer, but it was about 3 months or so, 4 months. A lot of counseling, a lot of work, a lot of talking, a lot of everything with our family and supporting our daughter. My wife is a champion. She is the best wife and mother. Nobody could have got our family through this like she did, and got me through this without being in trouble. I have a lot of people to take care of and be responsible for. I love you, honey. Thank you. I love my daughter. She's incredible. She's in college to be a nurse. She's done great since that days, the days since the incidents. And it's been tough. What would you do in this situation? And I share this to offer something different. I know I've had police friends get arrested for domestic violence. They reported all that, but it's different. It's different. I had a police friend that's wife was raped. Their marriage did not last. They just couldn't work it out. They had kids and it couldn't. He notified his sheriff when that happened. This is over 20 years ago. It's out there. But a lot of times when it becomes a victim, it doesn't get shared. And imagine, now you know me, I've made over 300 videos. You know I'm a defensive tactics instructor, SWAT guy, you know. I like my hands, like to throw a punch. Sniper on the SWAT team. I'm capable of defending. But when it comes to your family and times, yes, it is very hard to trust judicial system. It is. I retired from the courts, you know, the police. Hard to lay everything on them and trust 100% they're going to do it right. They didn't do it right in Georgia. They failed us. But what are you going to do? What happens if somebody in your family, even if it's a major assault, not a sexual assault, there's different kind of ways you can become a victim that can impact you as the officer. Now, I was supervising the isolation units at Hayes, Tier 1 and Tier 2. You know, over 300 inmates in these units. I'm back and forth. How am I going to go to work 1-2 days after I find this out? And when you get news that your young daughter's been sexually assaulted, and what I learned, as soon as I run into, you know, a child molester, you know, the chomo, whatever word you want to call them, sexual offender, inmate, whatever. As soon as I run into one of those and I know that they've had victimized a child, what am I going to do? I'm going to do something, say something, provoke them, try and get the flap open, spray them or something out of anger and retaliation. And that just sets me up for a lot of me first and my family for a lawsuit. Sue me, take everything I've got, and then I just hurt my whole family. That's not how I can represent my family, is it? And it's not how you represent your agency. Whether you feel like they've done you right or wrong, that's not how you represent them. Don't go out of your way and create lawsuits to them. So I was a professional and I did that. I stayed in touch. He asked me, the warden asked me, he's no longer there. I stayed in touch with him about every 3 weeks. Said counseling's going, you know, family, we're just, pray for us. We're just here. We're doing what we have to do. The time came by, and it was about 3 months, like I said, 4 months, and the counselor, as a family, talked to us and then told me, what we need now is to get back to routine. I know you told me you worked at the prison. You need the routine that you had when all this was going on before to instill that she can overcome this, and life has a little bit of normal, which I don't know how true that is, because when you're sexually assaulted at that young age, I don't know how much you can ever say life will be normal again. A small percentage. Smaller than what the counselors will tell you, honestly. But the routine was important. I called that lawyer again. He said, I agree, the counselor's making this statement. I would agree, the time has passed. You've been a professional through all this. You've been consistent. And if you feel you can go back to work without creating that, any type of added liability or whatever, then by all means go back to work. Get normal back in your home. You know, get the income going back and stuff, everything going back. You know, dinners with the family, movie night, game night. We lived in Georgia. We could drive to Gatlinburg or do something, you know, to the zoo. Get back to those activities again. So I called the warden. I said, this is what the counselor has been saying. This is what the attorney said again. I'm ready to come back. He said, okay, because it was over 90 days or 60, whatever it was. I had to go through the hiring process again. I had to fill out the paperwork and all that background. They did all that. And the good part of the story is I was professional in all this. Here's the bad part of the story. And I had made some videos before about, you know, administration being against officers and all that. I'm going to close with this briefly. I applied to go back, and it was the very end of a month, and my target date was to start the 15th of the following month. That would give me about 3 weeks. There were 5 open sergeant positions, so I could have come back. It was less than a year. I applied. I went through the background. It was posted. Sergeant exams. They did sergeant exams. He promoted 5 people the week before I'd been approved, and I was going to start on that, I guess, the 16th day of the month, the beginning of that next pay period. He promoted 5 people, and at least 3 of them were barely 18 months experience, no experience compared to mine, and put them as a sergeant, I had to come back as an officer. That's how I was treated when I was professional and presented to them. This is my situation. I need to step out and not create a liability for you. The thanks that I got was a big slap in the face, shovel full of horse doo-doo, to promote 5 people. None of them qualified as I was. 2 of them were good choices, but didn't have the 25 plus year career I had. And then 3 brand new, 18 months in a day probably, stuck them in there, so I had to be an officer. So I sat and wrote it out. Next promotion, I interviewed and finished first on the list again, got promoted to sergeant, and that ate some people up. This is part 1. Part 2 is why I completely left corrections in Georgia. Now this is a story that's going to blow your mind. And it's a story involves the FBI. That video will be coming in about a week. Stay tuned. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. See you soon.